Mount Vesuvius is long overdue for an eruption, and while it will certainly be devastating for those living in close proximity to the volcano, especially Naples, the surrounding region of Campania and much of southern Italy will actually benefit from it. Now, you might think I'm crazy, but let me explain. Italy is facing a serious economic crisis with persistently low growth, high unemployment, especially among young people, and a national debt that has almost doubled its GDP. These problems have been going on for years, but when the global economy slows down, as it is right now, they get even worse. Italy is heavily reliant on tourism and foreign investment, both of which are very sensitive to economic downturns. The country also suffers from endemic corruption, inefficiency, and wastefulness. So with such weak fundamentals, Italy is highly vulnerable to external shocks, and unfortunately, it looks like it's about to get one. Mount Vesuvius could erupt soon and cause massive damage to the local area and the Italian economy. But this disaster could also provide Italy with a unique opportunity to reset its economy and transform itself into a prosperous nation. You see, Mount Vesuvius hasn't erupted in over 1,000 years. Its last major eruption occurred between 79 and 80 AD, when it buried the Roman city of Pompeii and killed thousands of people. Since then, it has been dormant, although scientists disagree over whether or not this period of quiet constitutes an actual eruption. Either way, it is safe to say that Italy is overdue for a Vesuvius eruption. In fact, scientists have been warning about it for years. In October 2022, a group of volcanologists published a paper in the journal Geology that argued that Mount Vesuvius could erupt within the next 100 years. And there are some signs that the eruption may occur even sooner than that. Over the past few months, the Italian government has received numerous reports of increased seismic activity around the volcano. On top of that, locals have also complained about strange noises coming from the mountain, leading many to believe that an eruption is imminent. Now, before we go any further, let me just say that I am not a scientist. This video is based on my own research, and it should not be taken as professional advice. That being said, I do have a degree in geology, and I find this topic to be fascinating. So let's talk about why Mount Vesuvius could erupt soon. There are two main factors that could trigger a volcanic eruption. The first is an increase in magma production. When magma chambers deep beneath the Earth's surface become overpressurized, they can rupture and release large amounts of gas and ash into the atmosphere. This sudden release of pressure can also cause the magma to solidify and form a plug in the vent of the volcano, which can lead to a buildup of pressure and a subsequent eruption. The second factor is an increase in tectonic activity. Italy is located in a seismically active zone, and Mount Vesuvius is no exception. In fact, the entire region is crisscrossed by numerous fault lines. If these fault lines were to become active, it could cause the magma chamber beneath Mount Vesuvius to become overpressurized and erupt. So what's happening beneath Mount Vesuvius right now? Well, according to a recent study, magma production appears to have increased significantly in the past few decades. From 1944 to 2014, for example, scientists observed an average of 10 earthquakes per year in the area. However, since 2016, that number has jumped to over 30 earthquakes per year. On top of that, the frequency of stronger earthquakes has also increased. In 2021, for instance, there were 3 earthquakes of magnitude 3 or greater. This is significant because such strong earthquakes are typically only recorded once every 20 years. What's more, the depth of these earthquakes has also changed. Between 1944 and 2014, most earthquakes occurred at depths of 10 kilometers or more. But since 2016, there has been an increase in shallow earthquakes. This suggests that magma is rising from deep beneath the Earth's surface and accumulating in the magma chamber of Mount Vesuvius. This, of course, raises concerns about the possibility of an imminent eruption, and it's not hard to see why. As I mentioned earlier, the last major eruption of Mount Vesuvius occurred nearly 2,000 years ago. And since then, the volcano has been relatively quiet. However, it's important to note that Mount Vesuvius is not the only volcano in Italy. that has been showing signs of increased activity. In recent years, scientists have also been monitoring Mount Etna, Italy's tallest and most active volcano, closely. There have been several small eruptions in the past few years, and scientists believe that a larger eruption may be on the horizon. So, what does this all mean for Italy's economy? As I mentioned earlier, Mount Vesuvius hasn't erupted in over 1,000 years, and during that time, Italy has grown significantly. The country now has a population of over 60 million people, and its economy is one of the largest in the world. If Vesuvius were to erupt today, it would cause catastrophic damage. Naples, the city closest to the volcano, would be completely destroyed, and the surrounding areas would be severely affected. In total, it is estimated that the eruption would cost Italy up to 200 billion euros. Given the current state of Italy's economy, this would be absolutely devastating. However, here is where things get interesting. Every disaster also presents an opportunity, and Italy can use this disaster to finally reform its broken economy. In order to understand how Italy can make this happen, we need to take a closer look at the country's economy. Italy's economy is characterized by a number of structural problems. For starters, the country has a very rigid labor market, which makes it difficult for businesses to hire and fire workers. This lack of flexibility leads to higher unemployment and lower economic growth. Additionally, Italy's tax system is extremely burdensome. The country has one of the highest corporate tax rates in the Eurozone, and its value-added tax rate is also above the European average. On top of that, Italy suffers from a chronic budget deficit, which means that the government spends more money than it takes in from taxes. This deficit has been financed by borrowing, which has resulted in a massive national debt. To make matters worse, Italy's public administration is notoriously inefficient. Corruption is widespread, and bureaucracy is rampant. This inefficiency discourages investment and entrepreneurship, which further hampers economic growth. So what can Italy do to fix these problems? One option would be to implement supply-side reforms aimed at reducing the tax burden and regulation on businesses. This could potentially boost investment and entrepreneurship, which would lead to higher economic growth. Another option would be to pursue fiscal austerity measures, such as reducing government spending and increasing taxes. These measures could help reduce Italy's massive national debt, but they would also likely have a negative impact on economic growth in the short term. A third option would be to pursue monetary policies aimed at stimulating investment and economic growth. This could involve lowering interest rates or increasing the money supply. However, these policies could also lead to inflation. Ultimately, Italy needs to address its structural economic problems if it wants to avoid a long-term decline, and the country has already begun to take steps in this direction. In recent years, the Italian government has implemented a number of supply-side reforms, such as reducing the bureaucracy involved in hiring workers. Additionally, the government has also taken steps to reduce its budget deficit. But these efforts have so far been unsuccessful. So what does this all have to do with Mount Vesuvius? Well, when the volcano erupts, it will cause massive damage to Italy's economy. The country will have to spend billions of euros on rebuilding the affected areas and providing aid to those who have been displaced. However, this will also give Italy an opportunity to address its structural economic problems. After the eruption, Italy will be in a unique position. The country will receive billions of euros in aid from the EU to help rebuild the affected areas. And this aid will come with few strings attached. In the past, EU aid has often been contingent on countries implementing specific reforms. However, given the scale of the disaster, it is unlikely that the EU will impose such conditions on Italy this time. This will give the Italian government a rare opportunity to spend money without having to worry about meeting EU requirements. The government could use this money to implement the supply-side reforms I mentioned earlier, such as cutting taxes or reducing bureaucracy. Additionally, the government could also use this opportunity to invest in new infrastructure, such as public transportation or broadband internet. Such investments could help boost economic growth in the long term. What's more, an eruption could also provide Italy with a unique opportunity to rebrand itself as a tourist destination. In the aftermath of the eruption, it is likely that millions of people will visit the affected areas out of curiosity or to pay their respects. This could give Italy's tourism industry a much-needed boost and help attract foreign investment. Of course, this would only be possible if the government invested in marketing the affected areas as tourist destinations. In conclusion, an eruption of Mount Vesuvius would be a terrible tragedy for Italy. The country would suffer massive damage, and many people would be killed or injured. However, every disaster also presents an opportunity, and Italy can use this opportunity to finally reform its broken economy and transform itself into a prosperous nation. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching.